Hey, bonjour les amis. Hello friends. Today I've decided that it was time to talk about the all important subject of the subjunctive mood. Yeah, that's a tough one. I gotta say it's a tough one. So let's get started. I get what I did is that I look into my favorite grammar of all time, the Bescherelle, la grammaire pour tous, grammar for everybody. And I looked at every occurrence of the word subjunctive and I scanned everything and it's right here. So I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to try to be as concise as possible and avoid the fluff. Okay, so let's get started. So this is a little bit of an introduction. Yeah, there's more than this, okay? So I'm going to try to, this is of course in French, but I'm going to talk in English, loosely translating what's going on, but I'm going to concentrate on the examples. So as you probably know, the indicative mood, so it presents the action as being certain, real. On the contrary, the subjunctive mood expresses possibility, wish, things that are not set in stone, if you will. So the subjunctive is usually employed in the subordinate clauses, in French subordonné, and so he's saying that in the subordonné completive, so it's a type of subordinate clause which is introduced by que, and it's a complément d'objet direct of the verb, and it's a very good example here. So in this type of subordinate clauses, whether you put the indicative or the subjunctive depends on the verb in the principle. So, for instance, je veux que tu viennes. I want that you come. I want that you come. Je veux que tu viennes. It's not je veux que tu viens, it's je veux que tu viennes, because it's a wish, but there's no guarantee that the guy you are talking to is actually gonna come. So it means, by the way, I want that you come. Did I say that already? Have I said that already? I think so. So je veux que tu viennes. There's no guarantee that the guy you're talking to is actually gonna come. That's why you use the subjunctive. Now this one, j'apprends que vous venez. J'apprends que vous venez. So it's like it's the polite form. Either a polite form is talking to a group of persons. So I learn that you are coming, or you come. I learn that you come. So this is different because here it's a fact. I learn that you come. J'apprends que vous venez. Okay? Okay. So that's point one. Now let's look at the subordinate clauses. So for some subordinate clauses you need the subjunctive, and I will get back to this, but it's mostly when they express a goal, a concession. So goal is gonna be like pour que, when the subordinate clause begins by pour que, afin que. Concession is when it begins like by bien que. I'll get back to that. Okay, so that's an example. So in this case you put the subjunctive. It's a goal. When you have a goal, there's no guarantee that the goal is going to be achieved. So that's why you put the subjunctive. So j'ai insisté pour qu'il aille chez le médecin. So aille is aller, subjunctive. So translation, I have insisted so that so the pour que I translate with so that. If it's not right, let me know. I've insisted so that he goes to the doctor. So here, because it's a goal, you use a subjunctive. There's no guarantee the goal is going to be achieved. There's no guarantee that he's going to go to the doctor. Okay. Okay. So this is the elle pleure parce qu'elle est partie. So this is like a causality. So here you don't put the subjunctive. Let's move on. Here this is something that you will probably not encounter a lot. So I'm just gonna show you the example. Je cherche un cheval qui est une queue blanche. Qui est une queue blanche. I'm looking for a horse that has a white tail. You put the subjunctive because you do not know. Okay, so let me translate first. I'm looking for a horse that has a white tail. You're putting the subjunctive because you do not know if that horse with a white tail actually exists. It's the horse that you want, but you don't know if it actually exists, so it has to be subjunctive. Okay? So proposition relative, of course you know that it's a subordinate that begins with a qui, que, where qui is the pronoun relative pronoun. So here, je cherche un cheval qui pronom relatif, un cheval antécédent. Okay, and this whole thing is the proposition relative. Okay. Okay, last one here. So you use a subjunctive because there's no third person imperative. So they had to come up with a alternative. So if you want to use the imperative at the third person, because there's no third person imperative, you have to use the subjunctive. So you say qu'elle ne vienne pas se plaindre ensuite. That's an example. Qu'elle ne vienne pas. So vienne, subjonctif, venir. Qu'elle ne vienne pas se plaindre ensuite. She better not come to complain later. Okay? So this is basically like the imperative third person, which doesn't exist, so use the subjunctive instead. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so now it's going into the details of what is what. So here, emploi du subjonctif dans la relative. Emploi du subjonctif. So the subjunctive in the relative clause, again, it's introduced by qui or que. So, okay, so this is quite important because it's gonna happen quite a bit in real life. When the relative subordinate clause is after a superlative, relative superlative, like le premier, the first, le seul, the only, le plus, the most, I can add some others, le meilleur, the best, le moins, the less. Anytime there's some kind of superlative, you have to put the subjunctive because okay, first I'm going to go through that example. C'est vraiment l'homme le plus gai que nous ayons jamais rencontré. So here, ayons, que nous ayons. So it's the avoir, auxiliary avoir, at the in the subjunctive present. But here you have rencontré, so it means that it's actually subjunctive passé. Subjonctif passé. Okay, so you have the auxiliary in the subjunctive present, and you have the participe passé, past participle. That makes the subjunctive passé. Translation. It's really the man, the most joyful the most joyful that we have ever met. Why do you put the subjunctive here? It's because you are saying that, but you don't know every man, so you cannot say this while being 100% sure. So there is again a uncertainty in this statement. So that's why you have to put the subjunctive. Okay, so this make sure you are aware of it, because you're gonna see it quite a bit. So that's important. Okay, so superlative. Okay, le plus que. When you see le plus que, okay, in your head, think, oh, okay, there's going to be subjunctive here. All right, let's move on. Still in the relative clause. We are still in the relative clause. Here I'm not going to go through this because it's minor. Here you can use subjunctive, but you could also use the future. So, pareil, same thing for this one. When the relative clause is after ne que, seulement, you put subjunctive. I'm not gonna go into this because I don't think it's that important for you. Okay, so this is important. Emploi du mode subjonctif dans la completive. So the subjunctive use in the what's called completive. Completive is a subordinate that is complément d'objet direct of the verb. So let me show you on this example. Je souhaite vraiment qu'il aille voir un médecin. I really wish that he goes see a doctor. I think in English you are supposed to say that he go, because in English there is a subjunctive mood. So I really wish that he go see a doctor. So this is qu'il aille voir un médecin. It's called a completive. Okay, subordonné, completive, subordonné, proposition subordonnée, completive. Because this whole thing is complément d'objet direct of this guy, this verb, in the principle. Okay, that's what it's called, the completive. So the verb in the completive has to be in the subjunctive when the verb of the principle expresses, here I'm going to say in French, volonté, désir, refus, crainte. So verb like vouloir, ordonner, désirer, interdire, craindre. But the one you're going to see a lot is vouloir. Je veux que tu fasses quelque chose. I want that you do something. Okay, so I again say it's aller, subjunctive present. I'm not gonna go through this because it's like a detail. Le ne complétif. Je crains qu'il ne vienne. Je crains qu'il ne vienne. Je crains qu'il ne vienne pas. It's a detail. Okay, so but this is very important. This part here, that part, that you have to know. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so here he's talking about what you should be using when you have a subordinate of time. Subordinate of time. So subordinate of in full, it's proposition subordonnée circonstancielle de temps. So subordinate clause of time. So for instance, they begin by there's an example here. Dès que, tant que, avant que, après que. The one that you're going to see the most are probably this one, avant que et après que. So when do you use the subjunctive in a circonstanciel de temps? It depends on when the actions in the principal and the subordinate happen with respect to each other. So let's see a case where you have to use the subjunctive. Allons-y avant qu'ils aient fini le gâteau. Allons-y, so let's go before they finish the cake, or let's go before they have finished the cake. Whew. So allons-y avant que, because there's avant que, le allons-y is before this one. Ils aient fini le gâteau. Okay, so allons-y. So this should happen first, and then this should happen second. Okay, so that's why you put the subjunctive. And you may ask yourself, why? Why? Because there's uncertainty here. Because you are leaving before, you really don't know if they're gonna finish the cake. I know it's stupid, but it's true. That's the way it goes. There's uncertainty on this action. There's an uncertainty on this action. Okay, so this action precedes that action. So there's definitely an uncertainty on this action. Okay, that's why you put the subjunctive. So whenever you see avant que, you have to put the subjunctive. If you see après que, so this is the opposite. This is the exact opposite. You use the indicative, because here there's of course no uncertainty because the action has already taken place. Yes, so if you look at this one, vous rentrerez après que vous aurez terminé la vaisselle. So rentrerez future, aurait terminé, so that's futur antérieur. Okay, so clearly this action takes place before that action. So the action in the subordinate takes place before the action in the principal. In this case, you put the indicative because there is no uncertainty about this action in the subordinate. Okay, let's move on. Tough, huh? Okay, so modes utilisés dans la subordonnée. So now you're looking at the subordonnée circonstancielle de cause. So it's a subordinate clause of causality. So, for instance, a subordinate clause that begins with parce que, it's definitely a subordonnée circonstancielle de cause. So here it's a technicality. If the subordinate starts with non pas que, you put the subjunctive. Okay, so I'm not gonna insist too much on this. Let's look at what they say. Again for causality. Yeah. I'm not gonna talk about this. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so now it's different. Le mode utilisé dans la subordonnée circonstancielle de but. So now we are talking about the subordinate clause of goal. Because it's a goal that may not be achieved, you're gonna put the subjunctive. Okay, so the verb is always put in the subjunctive. Example. Okay, oh yes, so circonstanciel de but, it begins with pour que, afin que, de sorte que. Okay, so here's an example with de sorte que. They could have put pour que, same thing. So nous vous avertissons de sorte que vous ne soyez pas du tout surpris. So we warn you so that you are not at all surprised. That's what it means. So soyez, soyez. So it's either it's the second person politesse, polite form, or it's the second person plural. But it's the, of course, être, to be, verb être, to be, subjunctive, present. Okay? So whenever you see pour que, afin que, de sorte que, boom, subjunctive, because it's a goal. Okay, and because the goal may not be achieved, there's an uncertainty, that's why you put the subjunctive. Okay, so let's move on. Okay. Modes utilisés dans la subordonnée circonstancielle de concession. So now we are talking about the subordinate clause of concession. Concession. Okay, let me check my Bescherelle. It begins by bien que. For instance, bien que. Let me check. Oh, okay, there's a bunch of them. So they begin by, there's a whole list. Alors que, tandis que, sans que, même si, quoique, bien que, quand bien même, blablabla. So there's a bunch of them. To plus adjective que, si plus adjective que. The important one is probably bien que, tandis que. Okay. And yes, sans que is one of them too. So this is what they use in this example. Elle a disparu sans que nous nous en apercevions. Elle a disparu sans que nous nous en apercevions. So this is subjunctive present. Apercevoir, c'est... Oh, let me check my... Apercevoir. It's to see, but not exactly that. To see in the distance. So apercevoir, let's get the proper. To see, to notice. So this is the first person plural. Apercevoir, to see, to notice, subjunctif present. So, elle a disparu sans que nous nous en apercevions. She disappeared without us, without us noticing it. Basically, it's a loose translation, but that's what it means. So, but usually the most common conjonction for a subordonnée circonstancielle de concession is going to be bien que. Bien que, when you see bien que, boom, subjunctive. Bien que, subjunctive. Okay? Okay, let's move on. Okay, so now he's talking about the other moods that you can put when you have concession. So we don't really care. Since it's not the subjunctive. So let's move on to the last one. Oh, subordonnée de condition. So now it's the subordinate clause of condition. So when it begins, the most common conjunction is going to be si. So here he's talking about indicatif, conditionnel. When do you use the subjunctive? Oh, in all the other cases. So let's look at the example. Il deviendra riche pourvu qu'il ne fasse pas d'erreur. So he will become rich as long as he doesn't make mistakes. So here you have pourvu que. So it's a condition, and you put the subjunctive. So because it's a condition, you put the subjunctive. It's not certain. So fasse, subjonctif présent of faire, third person singular, fasse. Another example, pour peu que vous le laissiez faire, il vous ruinera. yeah, I don't think you're gonna encounter that one too often. Even that one, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I would just worry about the concession one. That one. Here is using sans que, but the one that you're gonna see the most is bien que. Bien que, blah blah blah, comma, principle. Okay? And in the bien que subordinate clause, you put the subjunctive. Okay? I think I'm gonna stop here. I would agree that it's quite complicated. If you have if your mother tongue doesn't have the subjunctive or doesn't use it much. So if you are English, if your mother tongue is English, it's not easy to understand all that stuff. If your mother tongue is Spanish, it's a bit easier because they use subjunctive a lot as well. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. If you have any questions about anything about the French language, feel free to leave a comment and I'll answer. Other than that, please like, subscribe. It helps the channel. So I thank you for that in advance and see you around. Bye.